Good morning and welcome to this session entitled Defending the Digital Mind, the Emerging Challenges of AI Agents. A couple of weeks ago I was in Berlin and I attended Microsoft's AI tour, and I attended a presentation by Satya Nadella who spoke about this exciting new transformative world of AI agents and automated agents and personalized agents, and how it can be democratized and all of us can create agents using Copilot Studio. And this was really the big thing of the whole conference. He also made an analogy to the world 30 years ago or even now, where we had thousands and thousands of spreadsheets in our organizations, and how in some ways AI agents would take over what that once was. And I thought it was a great analogy because in a way that sort of shows how the use of AI agents, personalized agents, automation will become democratized in the sort of end user context and therefore massively transformative to us. But at the same time, we all remember what a mess having thousands of spreadsheets in an organization is and was, and we spent years trying to get rid of them and put them into more controlled systems. So I think it opens up a world of both opportunity and also a whole lot of risks of how do we control this new world which will be unleashed upon us. And I think the sort of agentic world, as he spoke about, will become something, my prediction is will become quite mainstream. So everybody will be talking about AI agents soon, and at the moment it's probably more of it's a hype area, but it's probably more in the tech space that people are hyped up about it. But I do think in a year or two's time, everybody, Microsoft and the other hyperscalers, will democratize this phraseology. And of course, it's not just Microsoft doing this. All the big tech companies are doing it, and a bunch of other smaller tech companies as well. And we've got a couple of them here who can comment. So we're going to explore two parts of this agenda today. The first is the organizational adoption of agents, and I've sort of given you a bit of context to that already, and what that means more broadly for an organization adopting lots of agents and automating lots of things and personal agents, but also what it means for security and how we might get better at securing. And then we'll touch on the offensive side. So for the bad guys, for attackers to be using agents and be able to very easily create AI agents in a more offensive context. And let me introduce my panel very quickly then. So I have a really great panel here today. And first of all, let me introduce Hoda Khzaimi, who is the Director, Center for Cybersecurity at New York University in Abu Dhabi. Welcome, Hoda. Matan Getz, who is the Chief Executive Officer of AIM Security. And AIM is an innovative startup which is actually looking at protecting the use of AI in organizations. And Chavez, who's Chief Information Security Officer at Datastax, which is an AI data platform. So I'm sure you'll agree there's a lot of great experience in this group. I'm going to kick off with an opening question to all of you, and that is really for each of you in your world, what do AI agents mean to you, and what are the implications and considerations that businesses need to think about in the adoption of AI agents? And I'll start with you, Hoda.
I think AI agent is not something that is quite new to the field, I would say. I mean, look at all of us. When was the last time or the first time that we have used Siri or Amazon Echo or all of these kind of devices that is considered a personalized assistant? That's also a model of AI agents. When was the last time that we heard of like automated car systems where you want to live in a automated driving experience? That's also a model of an AI agent ultimately. So the ultimate capacity of AI agent is the ability to have that kind of, at the moment, I think it's very restricted by being a piece of software, but in the future it would be the capability of software and hardware that would analyze big data structures around organization and be able to make automated decisions without the intervention of the human in the middle. And it's a quite of an intrinsic critical experience at the moment, because you use a lot of reinforcement learning and a lot of machine learning aspects that goes with analyzing and learning huge data sets on environments. So the accuracy of those models are quite important. I'm not sure of how many of our audience are working with manufacturing units and having these kind of autopilots within manufacturing units that would automate the structures around factories. So this is also quite of an example of AI agent.
Great, some more examples. Thank you very much, and Matan, on to you.
First, thank you for the opportunity being this morning, so thank you for that. For me, to be very simple, AI agents are just AI applications that act on your behalf. And similarly to what Hoda said, Alexa and Siri were here for a long time ago, and the change is exactly what you described. I believe the change is the ability now to create your own AI agent very, very easily. You don't need to be a data scientist. You don't need to be a software engineer. With some tools that are out there, you can just click some UI tweaks or maybe give natural language description and instructions, and you have your own AI agent. So the change is the democratization you described, and now with the ability of everyone creating so many AI agents, this is where all the security concerns are coming. Because I believe the Alexa of the world and the Siri of the world used to be owned by big giants.
Yeah.
No, not anymore. Now they give us the ability to do so. So,
Yeah.
To create our own. Right. Excellent. Thank you, Matan. Nick.
So to your point, it's incredibly simple to create an AI agent. We have something called Langflow that we use to do that. And so given my role as CISO of an AI data platform company, I often meet with other CISOs to help them understand what it looks like. And so I guess the way that I most frequently describe it is imagine your most valuable employee or the colleague that you just enjoy working with the most, right? And that's an AI agent. And really there are three categories of things that an AI agent is good at. First one is they're autonomous, right? They can, after you give them the initial instructions, they go off on their own with very little input from you. Second thing is that they're adaptable. So, I mean, you'll tell it what to do, it'll try and figure out how to do it. And if it can't, then it'll try a different way. And then the third thing is that it's very goal-oriented. So after you have given it, the description of what you'd like it to do and how you think it maybe should try it, it'll do it until it achieves that goal. Now, we think about that like a colleague as one person, right? What if you had 10 of those? What if you had 100 of those? What if you had 1,000 or 1,000,000? And so, to go easy on our, human brains, let's just say that it's 1,000 colleagues that are doing exactly what you say all of the time until they achieve the goal, at which time they can be deployed to do something else. And so that's agentic AI. And whatever you point it at is what it will, along with its, vectorized database store and the LLM that powers it, will accomplish your goal.
So massive opportunity there.
would love to leverage actually Nick's beautiful analogy, because I love the analogy between humans and agents, because this is the ultimate goal. But think about how, what expectations you have from humans. Like, you expect them to behave politely. You expect them to behave the right way. There's so many expectations that sometimes we don't know. So we had an expectations that we will all get here on time, right? That we will dress up a certain way, that we will speak a certain way. With machines, all these expectations needs to be actually described. And these are the guardrails maybe that everyone is talking about. And this is the complicated, I think, part in the opportunity that you suggest.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that as an IT professional or a stakeholder in the business, you really have to think about what's the goal, and can I leverage the cloud that has some trust and safety built into it by maybe the large language model providers? Or do I need to go with an on-prem, almost small language model tied with an AI agent with some sort of vectorized database to vectorize all of the information? And in doing so, you can then deploy with your own trust and safety guidelines, which may be very different than that cloud-based environment.
So we're starting to go down this route of AI agent adoption within organizations. And maybe, Matan, I'll start with you. Let's just dig a little bit deeper into some of the risks which exist around this kind of ability for everybody to be creating AI agents and what that might mean in organizations. So I know your company is quite focused on solving for these problems. So where do you see the risks?
Yeah, so first, I want to say before describing the risks that it's early stages of everyone taking their own policies and deciding their own policies. And unfortunately, most companies act like they acted when ChatGPT was released to the world. They take yes or no a policy. I think it's the wrong way. Usually what companies do, they either block the use of ChatGPT or AI agents, and then they introduce fiction. They actually limit the business value that Nick's described, or the amazing value. And if they say yes, usually they tend to just say yes and have a complete, a very open playground where you can do everything and anyone can, do anyone that is needed. I think 2 parts here or 3 parts here that are very risky with AI agents. First is the actionability or the autonomous part of it. So if it has the ability to run financial transactions, as an example, or to make decisions on your behalf, and no human confirmation is needed, then this is a risk. So this is first part. Second, AI agents are very good when they are doing what they are designed to do. But when you start manipulating them, intentionally or unintentionally, sometimes there are some small data drifts that makes them behave not the way you wanted them to behave. Yeah. And this is where attackers can actually leverage this kind of unpredictability, or also some employees can do it actually, or people can do it unintentionally. So I believe this is the second part. And third part, and this is mainly for organizations actually that embrace AI agents, it gets very effective when it's connected or trained by sensitive data. But when AI touches sensitive data, this is where you need to be very careful, because this is where you have to make sure that the right guardrails are deployed to prevent attacks, to prevent data leaks. So this will be the third part.
Right. So in theory, then we could be increasing the attack surface of the organization by deploying these agents uncontrolled.
Exactly.
Okay.
And to your point, Matan, I think what we have here is a dilemma of trying to understand the efficacy of applying these AI agents within the platform, because at the same time, while you are trying to improve the autonomous decision-making structures within the system to have efficiency around the operation, you are also introducing a threat factor. You're introducing a mass capability of surveillance and analysis of your systems, possibly. And even if you have applied it within limited structures, you don't know if there is also the ability of a malicious actor to get into AI agents kind of configuration structure and apply maybe this generative adversarial network structure where adversarial models can be downloaded on the AI agents in order to maybe tweak an attack into the system. So this kind of intentional attack space exists one way or another. And at the same time, you discussed the merge of AI agents with LLM structures. And AI agents don't strictly work with LLM. LLM is one of the different machine learning kind of structure, automation structure it works with. But the ability of having this kind of vulnerable space, the LLMs are not really a perfect space for reliability or perfect space for having because they're very weak towards false positives and false negatives. So what would happen if you were introducing a critical decision-making aspect within your own automated manufacturing unit. And a small tweak will introduce a false positive and false negative into the whole organization. So instead of solving a problem, you introduced a mass kind of a failure phenomena into the organization. And dealing with that kind of mass failure from a single point of view is very important. I think the second risk that we should highlight here is the fact that if we like AI agents tend to require specific level of privacy protocols to be applied on the infrastructure. And most of those privacy protocols are not actually designed to be used en masse and not designed to be used on IoT sensory networks. And most of those AI agents would work with IoT sensory networks. I'm talking about federated learning, for example, homomorphic encryption, differential privacy kind of protocols. They're doing well when it's a limited structure, but if you want to apply them at mass, they would have issues of, I would say, speed and complexity analysis. So how would you deal with this? What kind of new protocols maybe you would need to introduce into the environment in order to preserve privacy and other aspects within the wider map of threats?
There's a lot in there, yeah.
And I can highlight very common mistake that I see lots of companies are having. Usually what happens is that there is a policy that the creator of an AI agent can actually give the AI agents all his permissions. Well, I'm not sure this is the right policy.
Yeah.
When there is a human in the loop, maybe you can access sensitive data. When it's in autonomous and it's running on scale, I'm not sure the same permissions should be inherited by the AI agents that were created by the same person. So, like, I know it's very simple use case, but very common one.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting concept. You would sort of generally think that the human permissions would be inherited, but when you start to think about it, it's a different type of processing. So it makes sense. Nick, you advise your customers on this kind of thing. So what sort of questions are you getting, and what's going from a risk perspective on AI agents?
The most common question I'm asked is within agentic AI, because it is drag and drop, and what you see is what you get with our product. Is my data secure? Is my data secure still at rest and secure in transit, right? Like, are the APIs secured? How are they secured? And it's an important question because on the surface, it's very simple. As you dig a little deeper into it, data poisoning is a real thing. I think that's what you were both referring to. And that implies some sort of malicious actor, right? But something that you could be exposed to, depending upon how your AI agent is configured to learn, is if it's at all self-referential and there is the probability or possibility that it could hallucinate when generating information. You now have an imperfect data set. And you're now creating vectors within your database that tie perfect information with imperfect information, right? And then you systematize it, and then maybe you scale it, right? And so we always say, you don't want to scale a bad process, but it's certainly possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine if the whole system around you is hallucinating about critical data and critical infrastructure kind of performance aspects. So I think there should be a limitation, and there are limited applications of AI agents within those circumstances. But how can we make sure as well? I think, Grant, you mentioned it at the beginning of the conversation, that those AI agents are not there just for functionality. They're also there to maybe cross interact with the humans. So if they cross interact with the human, then we have to bring in the other dimension of the operation, which relates more to understanding the human intelligence in the room, the emotional intelligence in the room, being careful about the well-being of people and all of these other aspects, the ethical considerations across the map, especially if they're going to be used on healthcare kind of data on the mass.
And then, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Being very practical, I would love to suggest 4 characteristics that I believe that if you truly understand them and define them for any AI agent, I'm not sure it will be secure, but you're on the right path, I want to say, for making sure they're secure. And first one that I see most companies are struggling with is the purpose of the AI agent. So AI agent needs to create value, and the value needs to be very specific and well-defined. And I'll give you an example. So like a shopping online assistant. Well, what do I mean to shop? Clothes or also chemicals? Like, as when the purpose of the AI agent is very narrowed and very specific, and I believe it's the same like software. We want to build software that is building of like very specific components and with microservices. Same with AI agents. I want agents to be as specific as possible.
Right.
So purpose is the first thing. Second thing is accountability. Like, and accountability doesn't end at the day of the creation, but the opposite way. It starts at the day of the creation. Third, discoverability. Everything needs to be auditable. And the fourth one, and I think we are all talking about that part, is it needs to be trustworthy. And I'm sure we are going to discuss that in the forum.
It needs to be, sorry, the last one.
Trustworthy.
Okay. Right. That is very great advice. And let's park. We'll come back a little bit to this control side when we come on to talking more about the use of AI agents in cybersecurity. But before we do that, I'd like to go to Nick. And what's your perspective, Nick, on the offensive side here? So, you know, from the perspective of the attackers using the same technology, which is now, as you say, drag and drop click sort of stuff, it becomes democratized on the other side. So what's your prediction on how this starts to evolve and the threat to organizations?
I think maybe prediction would be too strong a word because
Right.
I hope it doesn't happen.
Right.
Yes, drag and drop, right? At least the script kiddies back in the day needed to know a little bit of Linux and a little bit of Bash, right, in order to attack an organization. Let's go back to the example of the diligent colleague or diligent employee that you'd love to have that is autonomous and adaptable and goal-oriented. We all want those things. Now, what we don't want is a hacker that is capable enough to drag and drop and associate a vector, like a certain data set into a vectorized database, and then deploy that agentic AI once, 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. Now all of a sudden you have this very intelligent, self-referring, and very, very adaptive, basically DDoS tool, right? I mean, it's attacking your firewalls 24 hours a day. It never rests. It never sleeps. And you know, so on and so forth, right? Once it has penetrated, then it can go in and basically do lateral movements because it's been trained to do that. And anything that you can train a human to do on a keyboard and an interface, you can train an AI agent to do. Now, if you have 1,000,000 of those entities all coming at you all the time, there's a very low cost of implementing that. There's a very low barrier to entry. So not only will you have nation states that are controlling millions of potential attackers, you might have someone down the street doing the same thing. And so we as an industry need to come up with some better identification and better tools to address that before it happens, because when it happens, that's going to be a huge fire to fight.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that one?
I think we should put a design guidelines when it comes to insisting on reliable design and insisting on secure and resilient design when we're talking about any type of technology that would do mass analysis and automation at the same time. So mass analysis and automated decision making, because the human is not in the middle to be able to capture any kind of malicious intents in the system. Just going across with what you just explained, Nick, I think having that kind of self-regulated resiliency programmed into the AI agents is quite important from the get-go, where an AI agent will be able to detect if they are being tweaked for malicious kind of purpose, and then they would stop that immediately. And then they will self-evolve or self-heal if there is any type of attack that is happening against them in the system. And I think that's the missing element of the ability to stop and hedge any type of risks that would be introduced into the system, either by functional errors or by human kind of intended malicious kind of act. So that's what we're missing today in the design of the mass technology that relates to, I think, automated systems and AI, is how can we inherently, by design, make sure that those technologies are responsible and resilient and self-regulate themselves when it comes to those capabilities. I mean, it's interesting that we want to automate them for functionality, but we should automate them for security. That's the purpose. We should automate them to be secure and resilient and be able to detect the peripheral kind of threat map.
That's a great point. I think, I have a little bit of, or a lot of gray hair now, and so I'm old enough to have gone through several $10-million ERP implementations.
Yeah.
Now, designing an ERP implementation, secure first, secure by design, great, right? The thing with these AI agents is that they're so simple to spin up that you could literally create something and then have an AI agent that is a combative agent to that agent spun up in 2 minutes, like later, right? And so there's a certain amount of systemic framework that we need to agree upon in order to prevent that from being callously or casually used, right? Because we're not going to have the personal expertise embodied in each person creating an AI agent that will know to do those things,
Yeah.
right? So they have to be systemically implemented, and that has to be decided between all of us in industry in concert with the regulators and with the standards organizations.
And I would love to highlight not just the urgency, but also the opportunity here. And to what you both said, I believe that security is used to be very reactive. Like, to your question, like, usually what happened is that I saw security leaders waiting for, let's see what value we will get out of AI agents. Let's first understand the adoption of AI agents, and then decide if it's in our prioritization list. Because it's always about prioritization. Risk is everywhere, right? So I'm not sure if this is the right time to start working on protection and security guidelines and policy for AI agents, because I don't know how well it is adopted. And I think we should think about it the opposite way. This is an opportunity here for security leaders not to be reactive, but to be proactive and set the guidelines first, set the right design first, and only then actually be one of the leaders, maybe, even of the adoption, and show their use cases for adoption of AI agent. And I think this is a fault, like this is a failure that I'm seeing a lot of time, and AI in general presents here new opportunity, specifically also with AI agents.
Yeah. And I think we tend to design and release technology, to your point, Matan, to the actual environment, to the situational environment as soon as possible. And what we need to do here is allow an incubation process or a sandboxing process where you have the freedom to design AI agents, but at the same time, the risks are very hedged within that environment. And then you can later on decide to scale it up, scale it down, not use it at all, if it introduces specific, magnified risks to the platform.
It's interesting you also gave the ERP example, because I worked in those for many years as well. And in the end, it was partly the responsibility of the software provider to ensure a controlled and secure system. But actually, most of the effort came into the company to actually configure, implement, and put the monitoring and control around it. So I guess it is going to be a shared responsibility. But your point, Matan, around how security leaders need to get ahead of this one before it bites us, because I do remember all the assurances that nothing could go wrong around ERP, and they certainly did, right? So good. But let's move on then, just to touch on the defensive side. So how AI agents can potentially be used to make companies more secure. So that's on the detection and response and the automation of response as well. So obviously there's huge opportunity in there if we start to use them. There's also some risk between automation and control, and some of which you've already mentioned, Hoda. I'll leave it to any of you who'd like to start. How can we use this in cybersecurity?
My first computer had a lock on it, so you couldn't turn it on, and that was kind of like, hey, nobody's getting around this, right? And so as any industry progresses, the subtlety of the attacks and the defense becomes more sophisticated. And I think right now, as CISOs, we need to be thinking about, we have network traffic anomaly detection, right? These agentic AIs can be programmed to develop and simulate network traffic that is similar to the existing network traffic in the system that you're trying to target, right? So now we, as defenders, have to build an AI agent to detect an AI agent that's simulating the existing traffic on the network in order to penetrate the network, right? And so when you look at how meta that is, and the level of specialization that the persons that are going to need to develop these AI agents will need to have, you realize the amount of power that the AI agent has and the amount of trust that you must have in the person or the persons that will be developing the agentic defense to the agentic attacks.
Wow. Yeah. That means a lot of new skills and thinking differently, right? Hoda, you have any thoughts?
And we should also be mindful about the loss of information or fragmented information within AI agents, because most of the time they work in some scenarios in a decentralized manner to be able to analyze and detect anomalies. That's how we work on cybersecurity, right? We need the fingerprint of the attack spectrum and to analyze anomalies. But what would happen if they as well have the capability at the same time to scale up and to predict the next cycle of attack and maybe mimic a next cycle of attack? Would that be as well be considered just a defense layer kind of approach, or is it going to introduce a different level of complexity of attacking and defending at the same time within the network? And the computational power of those resources is something that we should discuss, because on a normal day, you have a specific boundaries to edge computing devices, and these are most of the time, I would assume that you will not be able to run all of them on the cloud at a specific point of time, right? So you would have to send this edge sensors or edge computing device and allow them to compute or infer on the device and learn on the device. But how much of our devices have the capability to do a wide mass surveillance of those structures and anomaly detection on such a wider surface? So my concern here is on the ability to scale up beyond the current scenarios that are available for defense that we are having at the moment.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
To your question, we all got beautiful examples for maybe the advantages of AI agents in favor of cybersecurity. 2 weeks ago, Google's Project Zero published that they found their first an AI agent found for the first time a zero-day vulnerability. So this is a beautiful example, and I think this is just a beginning of a new wave of implementations that we will see of AI agents that are supporting and working for cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Huge opportunities there. I think we've got about 10 minutes to go, so I'm going to pause here and see if there are any questions from the audience. Hopefully we haven't baffled you all with AI agent speak here. I don't have any questions coming
I
through.
think there's a question.
Oh, you do have.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
We've got two, actually.
Hi, my name is Carrie Ann.
Okay.
Just wondering, based on the discussion in terms of the use of AI and how it can learn from each other and even mount attacks against each other by learning from each other, do you see a world where the cat is already outside of the box, like outside of the bag pretty much, where you're speaking of regulations, you're speaking of frameworks, but the technology is now being used already?
Yeah.
And put in frameworks would only be those, just like cyber, other tools by responsible, ethical users. Do you see a world where we would end up having companies within the West, for example, coming up to be defenders against those of us who refuse to use the technology responsibly? Just listening to you, it just seems as if we're kind of ramping up to that point where we're going to have persons having to do exactly what, like you guys have said, train an AI to find an AI who's a bad AI to stop the bad AI. So I'm just wondering, do you see a world where it will get to the point where we're going to have to go beyond the business model of I'm first to market, but I now have to defend the market?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
Matan, and then...
Yeah. So first, I want to say that good always win.
Sorry?
Good, the goods
lead.
are
Okay,
always
good.
winning, okay?
Good.
So I don't like to self-fear, okay?
The cat isn't out of the box.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, so we are good, okay? I do believe that like external regulations and these kind of practices are behind. I'm surprised to see that what's leading the innovation or the adoption of AI here, secure adoption of AI, is what companies are doing for themselves. Mm-hmm. They have self-governance, they have self-regulations, they have self-policies. Well, is it easy to define these kind of policies? No, it's difficult. It takes time. Is it easy to enforce those kind of policies? No, it's very difficult. But this is where, I see lots of financial institutions and manufacturing companies, giants, that are taking the lead and actually deciding what will be the secure way to deploy these kind of technologies. And they're not waiting for any frameworks, external frameworks, or regulations to come, because they understand that these kind of I want to say, forces are behind. And if they will wait for them, they will be behind.
Yeah.
That's very reassuring.
I think for a very long time, that's an amazing question, and I think an amazing visualization of a battlefield, a live battlefield of AI agents to build security. And I think we've been running away from the demons in the cybersecurity field for a very long time. And our demons are in the lack of governance structure amidst all of the heterogeneous networks and platforms that we're building in multiple sectors. We have to face governance structures for those kind of new innovations, including AI agents and many other emerging technology concepts very soon. Also, the lack of agile regulation for devices. I mean, it takes us, 3 years to build a regulation that would kick into the field while the devices are being introduced and on a monthly basis, maybe within different variation and versions of updates in a few weeks, so in no time. So I would think that we need to build agile regulations that would also allow those AI agents to self-regulate, because you need to also get them to learn about regulation structure, hedging structure, so we don't have that kind of chaotic battlefield that we have in mind at the moment. Unfortunately, I think the mass of the risks that we see today, it's because we don't have security, I would say, scientists and cyber scientists and developers involved in designing the AI agents and other emerging technology, I would say, tools. You have amazing scientists and amazing as well developers who are racing to bring a technology to market for profitability, but also we need to bring responsible technology to market, for ethical use and for responsible use across the board.
Very, very good point. Did you have something to add, Nick?
Yes, briefly. I think that the hyperscalers will necessarily be the on-ramps for this, right? Because it's kind of easiest to say, look, I've got a budget of 10,000 or 100,000, I'd like to deploy a database and start building agentic AI. And so if the regulators were to focus anywhere, and probably take some flack for saying this, they might want to think about working with the hyperscalers first. Now, to Matan's point, companies will need to build new muscles, right? And the new muscle that they're going to need to build is doing an assessment of what their information is valued at, and then do the calculation of how much they're willing to spend to protect it, because the adversary is doing that very same calculation. So, I mean, if you have the ability to go and spin up an AI agent and do it on a hyperscaler, maybe kind of one of the lesser known cloud platforms, and build a Debian Unix box or Linux box and get it ready to rock and roll. Maybe they'll spend 20,000 to make 13 million, right? Through that agentic AI. And so the corporations really need to have an agile process to identify the information, how the information is being protected, how it's being deployed agentically, and what they're willing to do to protect it, right, on the investment side. And they need to do that on an almost consistent basis now. It's like a change process meeting, right? It's like, okay, let's talk about it for this month or this week or this period of time, because someone else is always evaluating the value of your information and how much it's going to cost them to take it.
Fantastic.
And I would like to add to what just Nick said. I think it's quite important to advocate for open source kind of platforms in here, because you want to see what's under the hood. You want to see what's being developed and allow for transparency, so you can cross-analyze, cross-improve the security status quo of the product that you have in mind within the Gen AI kind of structure.
True open source, right?
True open source, right. I exactly agree with you.
Just check with my panel. Have we got enough time for a question? One more? Okay, good. I think, yes, thanks.
Christoph Pailo, Robert Bosch, GmbH. I have a question regarding which builds upon what you discussed briefly now. Running and operating agents is difficult. If you look in the history of guiding agents, there are nasty surprises in that. And this we see in the cyberspace now as well. Intelligent agents tend not always sticking to the rules as expected. And but this alignment with the original intent with which they were built is the prerequisite for trust and for giving them more important business tasks as well. As validation and verification of AI is in the far future, perhaps we need something in between to monitor and to react on unpredictable or unwanted behavior of agents earlier. So what would be your take on safeguarding that the digital mindset does what it's expected?
Matan, you want to?
Well, this is exactly what we do, so thank you for the question. There is a need for inline, real-time, deep real-time guardrails that will limit what AI agents can do and cannot do. These are the expectations I was talking about. So, like, if it's a loan underwriting assistant, as an example, we need to decide, like, what kind of topics should be discussed with this kind of assistant and what topics should not be discussed. In some way, the fact that we can describe everything in natural language is an advantage, because now we can set the expectations in natural language, but it's not that easy to define it very strictly and to have enough room for the AI agent to do whatever is needed, but at the same time to be limited enough to be in the guardrails. And it requires expertise, but I agree with you that there is a need for new technology that will be monitoring and will be safeguarding AI agents, and will do that in real time. And you know, the existing security stack is not capable of doing so.
With that, I'm going to have to close this panel, so we're out of time. I want to say thank you very, very much to our panelists. I think that was a fantastic panel, such great diversity of perspectives. And honestly, I think this is really a huge emerging topic for us, and hopefully that's been clear to everybody. And you heard it here first. So thank you, everyone. Let's close the panel. Thanks, everyone, for attending, and for those of you online. All right.
Thank you.